Social media is the lifeblood of our daily lives. We're emotionally triggered 24/7 by posts and memes we see on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. But social media lacks context, which is why I'm here. My name is Christal Jordan, and it's time for a social conversation with clarity. Let's get crystal clear. Hello and welcome. Welcome to the finale for Let's Get Crystal Clear. I'm so thankful that all of you have been with us this entire season. And I thought, what better way to end this first season than to have a conversation that's a little bit more intimate with my own experience. Many of you know that I went through a life-changing experience when I was on Iyanla Fix My Life several years ago. Since that time, I got married, and I started to have conversations with other women that had a similar experience. Many of them are the audience that my new book, Dear Alpha Female, It's Not Him, It's You, is basically geared towards. So I thought for this conversation, I would bring in my personal coach and one of the ladies that was on Iyanla's coaching team who was very instrumental in our segment, Women Winning at Business but Losing in Love. So when I come back, I'll be joined by Coach Latonia Taylor, and we're going to get to the bottom of what has created this alpha female, what's motivating this businesswoman that has so many things that she's accomplished but still struggles with being in touch with herself. Stay right there. This is Let's Get Crystal Clear. A big part of my transformation as a woman, a lot of people were able to see that documented years ago on OWN's Iyanla Fix My Life. And this woman to my right is a big part of, actually, she was the integral part of the beginning of that journey, started with Coach Latonia. So it's my pleasure to welcome, and I think it's so befitting as we look to close out this first season of Let's Get Crystal Clear with Coach Latonia, my personal Coach Latonia Taylor. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure for being here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much. Because like I said, I've started having these conversations with women, and a lot of it started with the transformation that I went through that was jump-started with that process. Mm-hmm. And I was telling you earlier, that first conversation with you really let me know that a lot of what I was thinking was not the case. And we had this show that was in the last season, women that were, doing great in their career, winning the bag and losing at love, right? Winning in their careers and losing at love. And I never thought about why was it important for you all as a team then to bring that particular show to Iyanla Fix My Life?
Well, we go through a process of selecting what shows we are going to target, if you will, at the beginning of the season before we start filming. And this particular one kept coming up. And working particularly with successful women, because I saw it in my practice. And most of the women that I work with are high achieving women. And they have a different set of issues that often go unnoticed unless they're broken. And I call it the invisible woman, the woman who is successful, but nobody pays attention to her issues, the core of her issues, because she has the material success or the accolades and the achievement. And so we talked about, our pre-production would be hours sometimes, and they would get heated. And this particular topic, I found it interesting that it was difficult for the higher network eyes and ears to understand how important this was to Black women. And so it came up again with a little bit of a fight, because we knew that this was Iyanla's legacy season. And we wanted this to be a legacy to Black women who would watch this show, and not just Black, brown women, other melanated women to watch this show, because this is not represented on your reality TV.
Well, it's represented, but not, because most of the women on reality TV are very successful in some right. And almost a lot of the antics are praised or worshipped or actually make for great TV. But for someone to actually say, to add correction was not, definitely not being done.
Yeah.
So before I came into the conversation through a mutual friend of ours, Miss Shanika, who I wanted to be here but could not be here today. And I never thought about how many other women, because you guys did this in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah.
That, a place that if any place is full of women that fit this mold, Atlanta would be it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the women, because I can get into my story. You guys know that. But let's talk about some of the women that came and why they were interested to actually be a part of that show.
So it wasn't like we put out an all call for this particular show. This was a special show because we knew that we had to work with a special population. Ones, even in that population of successful women in entertainment, TV, or high executive positions, that we had to choose women who didn't just want to be on TV, didn't have an agenda. So they deselected themselves. And what happened is the show was out. We finally got, okay, well, if you can do it, then we'll consider it. And just when you know something is divine, when I was on Shanika's show for something else, I was doing a collaboration with another group, promote my book and all of that. And I mentioned it to Shy, and she said, "That's me. I'm interested." I said, "Really?" I said, "Okay, well, if you can get 5 other women, and I think we had about 5 other, and then the directors and producers got a chance to throw some names in the hat. But a lot of them didn't make the cut because of the process that we use of coaching, having coaching sessions, an initial coaching session, and a lot of the viewing audience, they don't know the level of coaching and screening and process that we do with each person. So you all weren't treated any different than anybody else that was coming on to go before they go to Iyanla.
Yeah. Well, that was interesting to me, and I think a lot of people don't realize that, because you and I, my introduction was a conversation that you and I had where we were just, talking. And of course, my background as a publicist, I'm very aware and very aware of how production works, but I genuinely I realized there was something that, obviously if I'm single and I've been running into the same issues over and over, there has to be some fault. I'm not going to lie, Coach Latonia, I didn't realize it was as deep as it was.
Yeah.
Because we came on under...
Most people don't.
Thinking, right? Like, okay, it's the dating scene in Atlanta. It just doesn't work with me.
Yeah.
But that first conversation that we had, I actually was exhausted after that hour conversation. And I remember thinking, whoa, I need this. And I didn't really think that I did. I hadn't really given a firm confirmation, but that conversation showed me that I needed more than I realized, that there were some places of disconnect that I wasn't aware of.
You were open though. And that's how some people deselected. I had other coaching conversations with other people who didn't make the cut. And if they were either triggered by some of the questions or just given surface level answers, we didn't want to work with that. And so like, you were willing to be transparent. You were willing to be introspective. And you may have been guarded in the beginning, just because that is really the pattern for a high profile, successful woman. She lives in the guarded space. She lives in the space of having to protect her neck, so to speak, or her image. And once we got through that in our session, I think that's when you realize, wait a minute, this is my life.
Yeah. It's not even just about that. It's I need this help. So let's talk right there, because this show, I wanted to end this season with this show, because I feel like this is, most of the viewers that are watching this show are women that can relate. I've always said, my outreach is for women that are this is the tribe that I'm a part of. Coach Latonia, what is causing this? Because most friends that I have, I got married a few years ago, 10 bridesmaids, all of them are women that have the same issues. We're friends because we are of like mind. And I could talk to several other tribes, Shanika's tribe and the different women that were on the show. Same thing is reflected in that. We see each other in our reflection. Yeah. So I want to just ask you, at the core of this, what is the issue? Because you have women that are very decorated with accolades, like you said, degrees, degreed down. You know, even the aesthetic, I'm going to do every single thing that I can do to make myself appear successful.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the work with my career. I work out. I've got this wonderful group of girlfriends, but yet there's still huge areas that have not been addressed. What is causing that disconnect?
So, there are a few things. The first thing is by design. We it would be crazy for us to continue to have women's conferences, retreats, empowerment and motivation, and not deal with the fact that this is by design for the woman to be lifted while her man is not. That's by design, while her son is disconnected from her. The number two thing that I think that a lot of us don't talk about, particularly for women who are successful, is the relationship between the Black woman and her mother. And usually there's a term that we laugh about and kiki about: raise your daughters and spoil your sons. And so the Black woman, historically with post-traumatic slave syndrome, has been the workhorse, the work mule. She's been told to get good grades. Don't come home. Don't bring any babies in my house. If you bring any babies in my house, you're going to have to get out of here. So some good girls, the good girl syndrome is a real thing. It's a real psychological effect on us. And so by the time we start to get the outside rewards, the inner becomes decreased. I think that's the third part of it. Most women who are so outside focused, outer focused, are disconnected from themselves. And they don't even know the most authentic parts of them because they're living someone else's plan. Go to school, get good grades, or now it's get on TV, build an audience. And so the more you start to become out focus, there's no focus on your truth within. Are you even in the career, in the field that you want? Are you really with the man that you want to be with? Or are you following the script that you've been given? And so I think that when we start to get to truth, that's when it takes a lot of willingness and a lot of work, because that means you have to look at everything you've attached your identity to and do some real reevaluation. And unfortunately, it takes for a lot of successful women to have to bump their head or fall on their ass.
Real talk. It's so that this is so good. It's almost like you need so much more time to talk about this. But when you have that, I hear women say, and I know you've heard this, a lot of single women, right? And that are very successful, that are very aesthetically beautiful, and will say, I know I'm the perfect catch, because and they're looking at all the things that they've accumulated. I saw that on social media on another show. I'm the perfect catch. I have property, I have real estate, I have portfolio, I have X amount of degrees, I make this amount of money, I look like this. And what I realized, I was like, when I started, after going through the process and starting to look, I'm like, none of that is you. It's all like a little girl that puts on a whole bunch of stuff and doesn't realize that. I don't think the women realize that is, I think that statement is said from a place of her truth. So how do we help people realize that that's not the truth?
Here's what I say to my clients. You've been overcompensating for being undercompensated. So you spend your life trying to overcompensate, but you never deal with the place in you that was undercompensated. It may be your mother, it may be your father, it may be the growing up in poverty. It may all of these, and you, I mean, it wasn't just your show, because we did a couple of high profile shows with different themes, but usually the little girl in the woman is so neglected. And then there's the level of self-betrayal that women have, and self-betrayal is harder to recover from than a divorce.
Talk
or
about
someone
that.
cheating on you.
Talk about that, because in that self-betrayal, usually is where you'll find, so you may be hurt, because I know for myself, I thought I was hurt over my marriage falling apart. But there was so much more wrapped in that. It was my own feeling of failure, my own feeling of self-betrayal, issues with my father, issues with my mother. All that was wrapped into this marriage that I felt made everything better, because I was able to, you know, got to college, got the degree, got the husband, got the kid. Everything that I'm supposed to do, I have the ability to do. But I was overcompensating for a lot of things that were not able to be fixed with degree, marriage, the checklist that we assigned.
The checklist, and then the story we say is, I'm not settling. So now you look at a man who doesn't have what you have as settling. And so then now when we get men who compete with us and who want to be prettier than us.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's going it's both sides.
You know, I'm making light of it, but the truth is many of us have not seen our mothers in healthy relationships.
Most of us.
We don't know the sound of a man's voice. So we don't know how to give space for a man to have emotions, opinions, input, leadership, because we haven't seen it. We haven't seen our mothers be loved on and taken care of. We've been following a model of Big Mama running the family.
The house. There's a conversation I had with a girlfriend of mine. She reached out to me after I was having these conversations, like, what created the alpha in your alpha female? And she said, I did have a father in the house, but I saw my mother talk down to my father. I saw my mother emasculate my father. So that's what I automatically picked up. And I realized I've done it to men I've been with. There was no man in the house, but my grandmother, when she did have a man, he was seen as an accessory. Oh, well, if he's not doing this, he can get out, because this is the core. We are the core. And so that example is often, even if they do see a relationship, it's usually one where the woman is the dominant, or is the one calling the shots, and then the girl grows up seeing that, and she repeats that. A lot of times the boy grows up seeing it, and he has a lot of resentfulness
towards women
and
trying to crawl into the womb of any woman that he can, because it's just as important for a man to have a healthy relationship with his mother, so he'll seek his mother between the legs of another woman. But we do it in other ways, and sometimes it is the achievements and that type of thing, particularly when there's a message of men are dogs, I can't trust men, and that type of thing. So when that's now fed and reward, we really need to do a lot of work with our daughters, and I consider them the millennials, the Gen Z, because they're pissed off with us, because we try to tell them what to do and not tell them the story of what we did and what we didn't do. And so now we see these images of these girls who are overly masculine, overcompensating because they didn't have a man in the house. And so now what we see on television is so distorted, and but the truth is, it's been distorted in our own families, because we're not telling the truth. And so it shows up in our adrenals and our health. So Big Mama usually left the planet because she was sick. She was sick and tired of carrying the weight. She didn't have the rescue, right? And so do we have to wait until it shows up in our breasts and in our womb? Or it shows up as infertility, or it shows up as another broken household. And guess what? Your money, your bag chasing, don't exempt you from that.
It can't fix that.
It cannot.
That's a great point, because I wonder, I felt like our generation failed the generation beneath us. I do too. Because you're right, you have women. You got a young artist, Glorilla, very talented, has a record out, Negro free. The idea is, I got to focus on my business. A man is a hindrance. Either he's used to get money from, or he's irrelevant to this conversation. This generation has a different, they're dealing with something different though. You know, these boys have been raised by so many women. They process their emotions like women. That part.
And so now you have an overly masculine woman and a feminized man. And so, but we're still using westernized measurements of how the man and the woman are supposed to relate when it's all twisted in our own house.
It does not.
And so we have goes back to raise your daughters, spoil your boys. And so all of these men who are coming through, my mama was a single mama and that's my badge of honor. That's cool and everything. But we got to deal with some of the stuff like women who are blocking men from seeing their children. And it might have been Big Mama, and it might have been Auntie that was also a part of that. When women who are penalizing men, if they can't have them, nobody else can.
Or if he doesn't want to be with me, I don't want my children to want to be with him.
Right.
So I'm going to tell my children every negative thing about him.
Exactly.
And then that actually, and I know from myself having a father that was a drug addict, you see yourself in your parents. So if you're constantly hearing from your mother that your daddy ain't right, a part of you is feeling like there's something wrong with me as well.
Right. You carry that water of your mother. So now her marriage ended and you're pissed off because of what happened to mama. Yeah. And many girls have a meditation. I'm never going to let that happen to me.
That's exactly what this generation. So I'm not going to be stupid. I'm going to get his money.
Yeah.
Get the head, get the bread and leave.
Right.
I don't care about him.
Right. And then there are women who have put men before their children in this generation. Now, boomers made us, they made us raise our siblings, and boomers have a story too. And Generation X did not do a lot of the personal development. We just had to survive. We were taught how to just survive, be tough. We were get money. But baby boomers are. We did a show on this too. We did a generational show on Fix My Life that was life changing. And we have the silent generation, baby boomers. Baby boomers were selfish. Silent generation didn't talk. And so now we have this generation, millennials, who came and upset everything.
And then you add a whole nother element with social media to where it is expanded. Well, I want to talk, when we come back, I want to talk about your book, because we got it. First, we acknowledge the issue, and then we got to figure out what can we do to change this. We're going to come right back with Coach Latonia and get crystal clear about how women can actually celebrate what they've accomplished, but also get in touch with themselves as well. Stay right there. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Let's Get Crystal Clear. We are here with my guest today, Coach Latonia Taylor, also author Latonia Taylor. And I have here your book, My Juicy Rebirth, A Journey to Healing the Feminine Through Pleasure and Sacred Process. And I'm wondering, before we went to break, we were talking about all the different issues, right? We realized that there's a problem. There are women that are extremely successful to themselves and to the external world, but are suffering internally. So now let's talk about how do we start to heal so that we're able to make our insides reflect our outsides, as opposed to doing it the backwards way like many of us have.
Well, I think the first thing is, and which was my inspiration for writing the book, and even your show and the other shows that we did during the Legacy season, is we know pain. We're identified with pain as a catalyst to change. So the first thing is that women have to make a decision that I don't have to wait until I'm in pain in order to be supported to do the inner work.
Why is that? Because I hear women say, I know for me, when you went through a breakup, sis, you're about to get your money up, right? When I went through my divorce, I became more successful career-wise than ever before. What is that? Even we see Mary J. Blige goes through heartbreak. She makes an amazing album. It's like that triggers something in us to rise to the occasion. Are we able to harness that without going through
I think you're able to harness it through pleasure. That's what I write about. That's my work. That's my ministry, separate from Iyanla.
I like that.
It's through pleasure. Because Black women we are taught to run to the altar crying, wailing. Go to get help go to therapy once you've had the breakdown, once you're in depression. But listen, when I do work with other women outside of this culture, what changed my life is working with them when the real housewives, right. They have a budget for therapy. They have a budget. Their husbands and them sit down and create a budget for personal development. Wow. Just like executives have executive coaches, many of us don't do that. That's still new to us, to have an executive coach that is a part of your team, that is helping you through the personal development. Through the other thing is, many Black women have not gone through rites of passage. One of the things that I do is introduce Black women to rites of passage. And then the third thing is, well, and it's not the last thing, but pleasure. Because we know pleasure as I'm getting my hair done, I got red bottoms on, but I got a black heart. How you got red bottoms, but your heart is black? What, that doesn't match. You need to, so you got to do the work that the inside feels as good as the outside, because we've placed too much value on things and on having this outside of real satisfaction and fulfillment. And the reason why we only think of pleasure as sexual, and we recoil from the idea of real pleasure, is because there's so much trauma, even in sexual pleasure. So we don't understand that pleasure is a real, it's vast, it's diverse.
Okay, let's go here real quick, right? Because I talk to women, so many women that again, from the outside, I can achieve what looks sensual, right? Making sure my body is right, dressing very provocatively, even bragging about what I bring to the table sexually. However, we know that there are so many women that aren't experiencing sexual pleasure, that haven't actually experienced orgasm. And I'm wondering, how can you connect sexually if you're not even connected to yourself? Is that possible?
Well, you can have sex. I have had clients who are strippers, but they've never orgasmed.
That's what I'm talking about. Because you hear men saying, well, sometimes the women that you think would be the most sexual actually are not.
No, because it's for women, it's easy for women to check out. And so we check out, and there's a whole science of reactivating the womb and having a conversation and a dialogue with your body, with your needs, not feeling guilty. We call it guilty pleasure when we have a piece of chocolate cake. But we don't talk about the sneaky links. We don't talk about all of even that listen, I know families where none of the women have been married. They've all had other men, somebody else's husband, but they got children. And where are all these children now that grew up where when the deacon that was in church, that you can't say anything, but he's at your mama's house or your aunt's house? So we have a lot of shame and a lot of guilt around these types of conversations. And this world has not made it easy for a Black woman to be sexual and respected. It usually is either or.
Right.
And so we have to find our place in the center and to be grounded, where we don't go too far to one side or the other. And usually that comes from self-esteem.
So when people say self-esteem, and even when people say do your work, because before I came on the show, I heard Miss Iyanla saying do your work.
Do your work.
I was like, what does that mean? And I'm thinking, I'm doing my work, I'm going to work.
Most people don't know what that means.
And when people say you need to work on your self-esteem, no one really knows what that is.
That not just self-esteem, even forgiveness, for instance. We hear it preached about, we hear it talked about, but people don't know that it's a literal process. And so when we talk about self-esteem, how do you put esteem in yourself when you talked about those achievements, right? Is that your only identity is performance-based? What happens when you can't perform? Or what happens when you've been performing but it didn't save the marriage.
Right.
It didn't save your son. There's a whole conversation we have to have about Black women and their sons. And the breakdown between women and their daughters. And the reason why I'm emphasizing women is because it's also been by design for us to target daddies who aren't there. But we don't deal with what was left for the mother that was there. So pleasure.
And what is she doing to further divide that relationship?
Right.
Often?
She oftentimes didn't know pleasure. I've had conversations with that generation who have 3, 4, 5 children, but they don't know how to use a toy. They don't know what that means. They don't know how to turn themselves on, because again, we've been so outside focused. And children was oftentimes how many of mothers got paid. You know, the welfare system will reward you when you had children, but you couldn't have a man in the house.
Right.
Design.
Design. We were talking earlier. I talked earlier about this. You know, we had a show earlier this season about our sexuality as women, and the fact that we are overtly sexual in what we show. But often that's used against us as well. It's almost like we are participating in the conversation to sexualize ourselves. Because young girls are saying, well, I can do what I want with my body, but they're still not. If you're not receiving pleasure from it, you're doing it as another accolade.
Yeah, or if you're not owning it.
Right.
If you're not really grounded in your feminine identity, and feminine doesn't necessarily mean soft. There's many faces of the feminine. And you remember when we did your show, everybody came in and selected what they were drawn to. We had wigs on. The wigs represented the how we present in the outer world.
Right.
And when you all chose the card, you chose it based on all of those different titles. Y'all should go back and watch the show. We did a lot of work on that show. And then when you flip the card over, it was an archetype. The feminine has many archetypes, but we're so disconnected from our womanhood that we have not been cultivated by women in our family to operate in our design, in our archetype. And so when you do that, it shows up in your work.
Yeah.
It does show up in your intimacy. Are you able to be intimate? Are you able to ask for what you need, how you need it, not how it's been pre-programmed for you to say or to believe and that type of thing. Pleasure in terms of sex is also an entry point into your spirituality. Pleasure in terms of sex is an entry point into your desire and your ability to manifest what you desire with ease, with elegance, with grace, and not with exhausting our adrenals, wearing ourselves out. What are we trying to prove? And to who?
What are we trying to prove? It almost feels like a lot of times we're in competition with ourselves, because I know for me, and all of this I wasn't really aware of because I was operating in what I'd seen, right? My grandmother was this way, my mother was this way. So I realized that I would hold myself to such high standards, and then if I didn't reach them, I would punish myself. So I felt like I wasn't worthy of things if I wasn't able to if I wasn't earning this amount of money, if I wasn't producing at this level, then I would be the first person to punish myself.
That's right.
So when I showed up to date somebody, I wasn't the type of woman that was upset about what a man felt about me. I already had such a low image of myself based on, I was loving myself conditionally on what I was able to achieve. Very unhealthy. And I thought it was motivating me. You know what I mean? I thought, okay, well,
your hustle.
This is exactly. This is how I stay. I keep reaching because but inside I'm tearing myself down. So when it came to letting somebody else in, it's like I can't possibly take any criticism from anyone else because I'm already doing so much to myself.
Absolutely, you just said it. The inner critic. The inner critic of highly successful women is bigger than oftentimes their own life, their own world. And what it does is it feeds the ego.
Yeah.
And ego means, if you can remember ego, it means easing out God. And so you're not even in touch with the divinity in yourself. Divinity, what? That shows up in how we think about women. When a woman says, I don't fool with a lot of women.
We had one of the women on the show.
Red flag.
Yeah.
Red flag.
Yeah.
How are you a woman and you don't fool with women? You're broken somewhere in your relationship with women. And so, I used to tease some of the women in my family when they start getting on that man train thing and they start talking about men and men this and that. I said, so what? You want a woman instead? I'm not saying anything's wrong with that,
right? But
for that generation, that made them say,
"How dare you say that?" That's you going on the other side. That boundary was there.
Yeah.
But you're right. There is a narrative there. So how do we? Okay, and I know we don't have very much time, but I do want to leave people with a few tools,
Yeah.
and then your website and your book, so they can go get the rest of it there. But how do we start to change this? Because it feels like it's so ingrained.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm in my 40s. My friend, my tribe are women around that same age, 10 years up or down, and this is ingrained. We've been doing this. I can remember being 12 years old and being able to see my father and thinking he was not going to like me if I had acne on my face. So because I always felt like I had to show up perfect. So if I didn't have straight A's, if I didn't have all this, then I wasn't worthy of him, loving me. So I felt like, okay, my dad is not there, but if I do everything perfect, and this started very early.
Yeah.
Second, third, okay, I got to get good grades.
Yeah.
I got to have straight A's so my mom will be happy with me, so she'll love me. I
too.
can't afford not to do that.
Absolutely.
So that's been in me for 30 plus years.
Right.
How do we start to make that change and actually break down some of that that's been built inside of us?
So I do think that women need to be in the company of positive, healed, whole women. And if you are around a bunch of angry, bitter, gossiping, backbiting women, that change your address quick from that. Even if the address is your childhood home. Sometimes you need to change the address of who you're keeping company with. And we always talk about the friends, that's big right now with the young lady who recently lost her life. But we're not looking at right in our own home where we need to shift. Look at whether your mother was fulfilled. Is she happy? Was she shown affection? And then give yourself permission to ask for help. Give yourself permission to be vulnerable somewhere. Because if you don't, it will show up in your life. You will attract, because achieving women attract men. They attract them, but oftentimes they repel and can't hold them because we start fighting with them because of our unmet needs. And so those unmet needs need to be addressed because they will show up as pathology either in your relationships with other people, other women, your intimate relationships, or your own children. Your children will bear your heartbreak. So if your incentive has been the bag, let the incentive be your children. Let the incentive be to attract a healthy relationship because you're willing to be intimate. And to be intimate means into me I see. Intimacy. Into me I see. If you can't see into you, you really can't fully allow yourself to let another person see you in your flaws. And then men don't want your representative either, or women, if you're same sex loving. So I would say get into healthy relationship, number one. Get into healthy relationship. Then get into spaces with qualified professionals, whether it be therapy or it be spaces where there are people who have done the work. And that's not everybody. Just because someone has hung out a shingle and they are flashing shiny things, that's not everybody. Don't let the fools go fool you. When you can do the work, it is a process sometimes that you repeat over and over again. And so I do think women need to experience workshops, rites of passages, and things regularly so that it becomes a part of your language, a part of your reference point, that you develop new healing experiences or healed experiences. So now your muscle is built stronger. You can't keep being the same person doing the same thing expecting different results.
Absolutely. So we talk a lot about, this show is based on taking social media, the narrative on social media that we see in very short clips or even pictures, and adding some context to that.
Yeah.
And so I want to ask you, when you look at social media, because a lot of what all of us are pulling for rests on what is trending on social.
Yeah.
When you see the images of Black women that are celebrated on social media, earlier this season we had, boss chicks and the conversation about what does that look like. What is the biggest falsehood or biggest hypocrisy in that example, in that exterior that you see celebrated on social media?
Oh, wow.
Oh, let me start that.
Let me clear my throat while you do it. Okay.
Okay. So when you look at, we see what's happening on social media, right? There's this narrative of this superwoman. She looks great. She's perfect shape. She's got the job. She's got the money. She's got the kids, the picture perfect. What is the biggest hypocrisy do you find in the image that is perpetuated on social media when it comes to this successful woman, the woman who has it all?
I think that it is the most dangerous image out on the internet, because that woman oftentimes is one step away from the ledge. And we don't deal with how it has showing up in many of our millennials, where they are taking themselves out, or their world has to completely fall apart. And so this whole thing, that is a lot of work to keep that image up. And most of those people are the ones that are the most loneliest people, craving to be seen and not be an ATM for their families. It is, I work with a lot of celebrities who are tired. They are worn down by what the expectations are of those people around them.
Many of the women that I know, and a lot of social influencers, celebrities also, it's almost like you created this prison for yourself.
Yes, it's
like, and I'm just like, you know, all these expectations, I'm the one that has put them on myself, and yet they're killing me. So what is the first step? Because I know we're almost out of time, but what would be the first step for someone that finds themselves overwhelmed by a situation that they've created for themselves?
Tell the truth. Tell the truth, because it's the truth that will set you free. And you can usually do that when you're in a safe space of womanhood therapy or therapeutic environments, and get with other people who are telling the truth.
I think that's the key. That's key, because that doesn't, we don't see that. We don't see the truth isn't celebrated.
Right.
You know, and I would even say, you know, from my background as a publicist, I would tell the truth doesn't always matter when it comes to what people are going to digest, because the truth just is not always as attractive to the palate as the reality is, right? So people hide behind that.
And what successful women can do, and this is follow the model of that show. Get another 3 or 4 of your girlfriends, and you all get together and you invite a coach, somebody in to facilitate healing of you doing the work, not just one time, but to do it over and over again. That now becomes a part of your circle where you can hold each other accountable for doing the work. Successful women must be held accountable for doing their inner work the same way they are when they do their performance evaluations of themselves, or other people are doing it for them.
I love that. Well, make sure that's a great note for us to end on. I think accountability is huge. And I believe that only another woman can hold, you know, someone that you respect can hold you accountable. It's not, it was easy for me to take that from you because there was a level of respect. It was easy for me to take that from Miss Iyanla because I had a respect for what they were saying. I felt the truth when you spoke to me. So that allowed me to hold myself accountable. And I think that has to happen in ongoing. Make sure that you pick up a copy of My Juicy Rebirth, A Journey to Healing the Feminine Through Pleasure and Sacred Process. We'll have to have more of this conversation later, because we're going to come back. This is, as we wrap up, I'm excited about this conversation and the fact that this opportunity is spurring more conversations for women to come together. Alpha women, or just women that are that care about their business and showing up, but there's even more work that is to be done. Thank you so much.
Thank
Coach
you for
Latonia.
having me.
Thank you. We got more work to do. All right, stay right there. This has been Let's Get Crystal Clear, and we'll be right back. A very, very special thank you to my guest, Coach Latonia Taylor. I hope you guys got a chance to get a little bit of what I've gotten from her over the years. There's so much more. You definitely should pick up a copy of her book, and also you can go to the website to learn more about what she's working on. Also, stay tuned. We have so much more coming up with this conversation. My entire book is geared towards this. There's help for those of us, and we have to keep each other encouraged. I appreciate you all again for hanging out with me this season, and we'll be back. We're coming back with more Let's Get Crystal Clear, taking social media conversations and adding a little context. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.